This from Sam J to open up the show. Kevin, why on earth would you want the Skins to take a running back in the first round? The draft is apparently filled with running backs that you can get on the last day of the draft. Why would you spend a first round pick on one? Make it make sense. Thank you, Sam J, for that. I'll address it in a moment. A couple of guests on the show today. You're going to hear Steve Zabin on this show today. We were having a long conversation about Rory McIlroy's incredible finish on Sunday at the Masters. I'll play some of that for you on the show today. And Bo Marchionte, who does draft expertise and analysis for collegetopro.com. You'll hear Bo on the show today. The NBA playoffs start tonight. Play-in games. Did you know, Max, and I didn't know this until yesterday, did you know that Oklahoma City, who finished 68-14 this year, that they had the largest margin of victory average in the history of the NBA at 12.9 points per game, eclipsing the 71-72 Lakers. I believe that team had Wilt Chamberlain, Jerry West, Gail Goodrich, and others. I knew that OKC had a dominant season. I did not realize until over the weekend that their margin of victory was the largest in NBA history.
Yeah, that's a shocking stat to hear. Looking at the 68-14, I mean, Shea has been having an MVP caliber season. It surprises me, but now that I'm really thinking about it, it doesn't surprise me that much.
68-14 with a 12.9 average margin of victory.
It's amazing.
Here's the thing, though, with the NBA playoffs, the play-in games starting tonight, and there's actually a really important game. Grizzlies Warriors, Memphis Golden State late tonight. I will be the one that will be up watching this tonight. I will be. The Warriors, I think, are 7-point favorites, and they need to win this game. I actually bet the Warriors after the Jimmy Butler trade at plus 900 to win the West. And I don't feel great about that now because I just think the West has gotten so much better. But if they win tonight, they'll play an inexperienced Houston team in a 7-2 series, and I think Golden State would have a shot of winning that series. If they lose tonight, Memphis would end up playing Houston, and then Golden State would have to win on Thursday night just to get in as the 8th seed to face Oklahoma City. Here's the thing about the NBA playoffs historically. It's a gradual process before you're ready to win a title. And this is really going to get tested this year because Oklahoma City is so young. They're so inexperienced when it comes to postseason play. They last year won a series and then lost a series. They beat last year. They in last year's postseason, they beat New Orleans in 4 straight and then lost to Dallas in 6 hard-fought games. The next step for a team like this isn't to win a title typically. It is to win another series, to be in a Western Conference Finals. And then next year, maybe to get to the finals. And then the year after that to win it. But the Oklahoma City Thunder, for those of you who have not paid attention to the NBA, just had one of the most impressive and historic seasons in the history of the league. Their 16-game margin over the 2 seed Houston is the 6th largest in NBA history. Number 2 in the West, 16 games behind Oklahoma City. The next best margin of victory in the NBA was 9.5 points. Cleveland in the East. Cleveland is the 1 seed in the East, even though Boston is favored to get to the NBA Finals, even though the Celtics are a 2 seed. But good games tonight. Oklahoma City won't start playing until this weekend. They'll play Sunday. The Saturday lineup is set because the games are set. The play-in games will determine who we see on Sunday against some of the higher-seeded teams, the 1s and the 2s. But tonight it's Hawks Magic, snoozer, although Paulo Banchero is a superstar. For those of you who haven't paid attention, remember he played 1 year at Duke. He was injured for part of the year. They play Atlanta tonight in the first game, and then it's Memphis at Golden State. And I do think if Golden State wins tonight, they'll have a chance to beat Houston in a best of 7. Jimmy Butler's health is in question. He banged knees with Kawhi Leonard on Sunday in the season finale. Imagine it was Butler who walked away injured and not Kawhi Leonard, because that's the biggest issue with the Clippers is if Kawhi stays healthy, can they make a run? Of course they can. Kawhi is still, when healthy, a top 5 player in the NBA. And by the way, a top 3 offense-defense, two-way player. And he has played at a superstar level since coming back in late January to the team. But I need Golden State tonight. I need Golden State to win. I've got them plus 900. And I can start to hedge if they, can beat Houston in the first round, and then we get them into the conference semifinals. All right, back to Sam J's email to me about why on earth would you take a running back in the first round? The draft is apparently filled with running backs that you can get on the last day of the draft. Why would you spend a first-round pick on one? Make it make sense, Kevin. Yeah, it's not that I want Washington to take a running back with their first pick. I've just considered and presented the situation of a running back being the best player available on their board when they're on the clock at 29. And what would they do if that were the case? Well, if you listen to Adam Peters and you take him literally, he says best player available, or you end up making your biggest mistakes. Some of the greatest general managers in the history of the game, including the greatest general manager in the history of this city, Bobby Beathard, always said, once you veer away from best player available, that's when you make your biggest drafting mistakes. Now, we know that Washington's not going to take a quarterback, if a quarterback ended up being the best player on their board. There are exceptions to the rule. By the way, a quarterback won't be, because this is a bad quarterback draft, won't be the best player on their board. A kicker, punter, long snapper, those positions. And in Washington's case, I don't know if left tackle is the best player on the board, if that's who they take, but I don't think they'd shy away from it either, even though they just traded a boatload to Houston for Laramie Tunsil, and they'll end up paying Tunsil too. But anyway, what I've presented really is just this idea that what if at 29 they can't trade back because everybody wants to trade back, and there aren't enough teams willing to trade into the first round, into the latter portion of the first round. What would they do if running back was the best player on the board? My feeling is that if they believe that the best player on their board is a running back, and that the running back in question, the best player available on their board, has the potential to be elite, top tier, Saquon Barkley-esque, Bijan Robinson, if it's that type of running back, you take that player there. Genty will be long gone. Ashton Genty will be long gone. I've seen some mocks with him as high as 3. Certainly there's a top 10 consensus on Ashton Genty from Boise State. The next back, Hampton from North Carolina, is also considered to be a first-round back. If he's gone also, the question would be, if a guy like Travion Henderson from Ohio State is there at 29, let's just say that, Henderson for Washington's board is the third best running back in the draft, and Henderson's the best player available, the BPA, on their board at 29 when they're on the clock. If they think that Henderson can be an elite running back in the NFL, then it's easy. You take him. He's the best player available on your board, and you see greatness in this player. The question would be, and let's just use Henderson as the example. If he's the best player available on their board, but they don't really see him as the kind of impact running back that Saquon Barkley is, as an example, what do you do then? Because, Sam, I'm kind of with you on that. Like, I don't think you take a running back in the first round unless you absolutely love that running back because you think he's going to be special. You think there's Christian McCaffrey, Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry kind of impact, potential. Because let's face it, if you add an elite level running back to this offense, I mean, Jaden, Terry, Debo playing on a contract year, and then a running back that strikes fear into a defense, a running back that you have to game plan for. I mean, the offense was near unstoppable at times last year without a true big-time running back threat. Robinson Jr., Eckler, I thought they were their most lethal, actually, when Eckler was healthy and in the game. Imagine a great running back in the backfield with Jaden Daniels. Imagine a back that we know is great. Imagine Gibbs and what we saw in that playoff game and why they didn't give him the ball more is still beyond me. Imagine a Gibbs in the backfield with Jaden Daniels, with Terry and any group of receivers you want to put out there, Debo out there. That, I have been adamant, and I think most of you agree, that this offseason really needed to be about improving defensively. That ultimately, they fell a game short because more often than not, they just couldn't get off the field. They couldn't make a play defensively. They couldn't stop the run. But if the best player available is an offensive player, I'm all for it. And with respect to running back, if they believe that running back can be elite, I'm all for that. But I really would have an issue if the best player available is a running back, but they don't see the running back in that top tier category. The best player available is a running back. But it's not, Genty, it's not Hampton, and their third best running back is a guy that they would probably view as a second round guy, but a guy that could be really, really good, but he's the best player on the board. What do they do then? If they don't see him as a major impact guy, even though he's the best player available. And the thing about that position is when you go back to just the history of running backs in the draft. Yes, and I think I pointed this out yesterday. In recent times, top half of the first round running backs have produced at an elite level. All right. Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs picked 8th and 12th in the 2023 draft. They are both elite running backs. When you go back to where was the last time a top half of the running back? Saquon Barkley at number 2 overall in 2018. Before last year, that was the last time a running back was taken in the top half of the first round. In 2017, Leonard Fournette was taken at number 4 overall. Good back. Christian McCaffrey was taken at number 8 overall. Elite back. Zeke Elliott in 2016 at number 4 overall. He certainly had a couple of elite seasons. So the history recently of top half of the first round running backs, it's produced in a big way for the teams that took that shot. But Washington isn't in the top half of the first round. They're at the end of the first round. And we know that backs come in all shapes and sizes in terms of really, really good ones after the first round. Last year's draft, Bucky Irving, 4th round. All right, 2023 draft, Achane in the 3rd round. Chase Brown, who played, I think, really well before he got hurt in Cincinnati this year, in the 5th round. 2022, when you go, Tyler Algier, 5th round. Really good running back. Kyron Williams, 5th round. 2021, Chuba Hubbard, 4th round. Khalil Herbert, 6th round. He's been a good back. 2020, DeAndre Swift, Jonathan Taylor, 2nd round. J.K. Dobbins, 2nd round. Injuries, obviously. Zach Moss, 3rd round. We know that the history of the draft, some of the best backs, maybe not the elite backs, but you get really good running backs later in the draft. Miles Sanders was a second-round pick. David Montgomery was a third-round pick. I'm looking for like the total home run, like on day 3. I mean, there have been some. Can't pull them quickly here. Well, Alvin Kamara, third round. There you go, 2017. Dalvin Cook, second round. Boy, that draft, the 2017 draft, Fournette at number 4 overall, Christian McCaffrey at number 8 overall, Dalvin Cook in the second round, Joe Mixon in the second round, Alvin Kamara in the third round, Kareem Hunt in the third round, James Conner in the third round, Samaje Perine we took in the fourth round. And then, Jeremy McNichols was in that draft. All right, so look, the point being, it's going to be interesting if the best player on their board is a running back, and yet they don't see that running back or that player in the same class as, say, a Hampton or a Genty. What would they do? I don't know. This from Manny. Manny wrote, and I've actually seen some of this, Manny. He writes, have you seen the Breece Hall rumors? The Jets are interested in dealing him. I like Breece Hall. I'm not, he's like, I like Breece Hall. He's a known versus an unknown. Yeah, I don't think I'm trading for a back like Breece Hall. I like Breece Hall too. I think he's a good back, and he's very versatile. I mean, he can catch the ball. He can obviously run with it. I'm not going to trade for a back in a draft loaded with backs when I can get one on a rookie deal with 4 years left. I mean, I'm just not doing that. Not in this draft, not for a Breece Hall, and nobody else. Christian McCaffrey, we talked about him recently and the possibility that he could be available. But there are some really good backs in this draft. To me, I've mentioned this many times, and we'll do some of this next week in advance, a couple of days before. I really am a Genty fan. By the way, I've seen him comp to Alvin Kamara over and over again. I don't see that comp. He's a much more physical running back. He is, short in terms of his height, but he's 215 pounds. And he's a more physical running back at the point of contact. I love Hampton. I mean, he's got superstar ability. I think Henderson's speed and playmaking ability is elite. The two guys that I have focused in on, which are not day one guys, and although it looks like the guy that I love is climbing into that night 2 category, but I really like Caleb Johnson from Iowa. But the guy that I've loved for a few years now, going back to Oregon State, is Damian Martinez. I think Damian Martinez is going to be a really good NFL back. Is he going to be elite? Is he going to be Barkley or Robbins? No, I don't know that that's the case. But he is a powerful running back at 6 feet, 220, 225, can play, I think, even bigger than that. He is athletic. His RAS score, his relative athletic score, was really, really strong at the combine. But the thing that I love about him is just his feel and his vision in tight spaces. He has that elite level feel and vision that you see in the best of running backs. And then when he finds that crease, he runs people over. And he's got really, he's got good enough speed. He does not have elite speed. I think he ran 4.5 or 4.45, something like that at the combine. But I love Damian Martinez. But apparently now, so does everybody else, and he's going to go on night 2. So do you use your number 61 overall on a guy like that? Best player available second round, different than best player available first round if you don't see that player as elite. But the running back conversation is an interesting one. I do think that they are going to be in the market for a running back in this draft. They have 5 picks now. Who knows? Maybe they'll end up with a 6th, by trading back. Even if it's not in the first round, maybe it's the second round to pick up an extra pick. But I think of their 5 picks, or maybe 6, if they end up trading back at some point, I would be really surprised if one of them is not a running back. I did see that among their 30 top 30 visits, Ollie Gordon, the running back from Oklahoma State, who was unbelievable in 2023, but not as much last year. He's a taller back, a lankier, taller, 6'2", but big back. He ran, I think, like 4.6 something at the combine. He did not have the production last year that he had in 2023 when he was just outstanding and actually, the Doak Walker Award winner. He rushed for, I think, 1,700 plus yards and 21 touchdowns in 2023. And then his production fell pretty much in half. He was like at 880 and 13 touchdowns. In 2024, Oklahoma State was not as good. I did see that they've got him in for a top 30 visit. I think he is definitely a day 3 guy, best case. The guy that has kind of, at least as of now, and who knows when we get to the draft, because a lot of this, this could be sleight of hand by a lot of these teams. But the guy who made a name for himself in the playoff, Cam Skattebo from Arizona State. I mean, what a tough runner, tough kid, unbelievable competitor. The thing that I just did not see with him is I didn't see the speed and I didn't see the vision from him. I saw a guy that wanted contact, desired contact, and delivered contact on almost every run, and a guy that was incredibly versatile also as a pass catcher out of the backfield. But to me, he's like a bowling ball where there's not, much break to it. That thing isn't curving in to the pocket on that, is it the 10 pin? No. 7-10 are the two corners, right? Whatever the first pin is. I don't know what number it is. He's athletic, but strength is more his thing than sort of vision. But I think running back's going to be really interesting. I would definitely wager on Washington taking a running back for sure. All right. Yeah. Not going to do calls on this. We'll save some of the draft calls for next week. Give you guys a chance to weigh in next week. Up next, Bo Marchionte, who covers the draft for collegetopro.com. He will be my guest. You'll hear that next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. The draft a week from Thursday night. Bo Marchionte covers it for collegetopro.com. He joins us right now. So it's obviously not the quarterback draft that we had last year, Bo, but for somebody who is just starting to tune in and get ready for it, how would you describe the 2020 draft going into it?
Well, yeah, I mean, last year we had 12 quarterbacks go, or 6 quarterbacks go in the top 12 picks. You know, I think Cam Ward will go 1 to the Titans out of Miami, and then you look at Shedeur Sanders and Jackson Dart. I think once you get to those 2 names, those could be the only other quarterbacks taken in round 1. And I think the variation on Sanders of where he could go, I mean, you could say the window goes from 2 to 20 to 25 even. I think there's a wide spectrum, and I think Dart is that same type of guy where you're talking, you know, 10 to 32 or a day 2 guy. So it's not quarterback heavy, as you mentioned, but nonetheless, if you're tuning in right now or you're getting acclimated to this 2025 draft class, you're going to see a resurgence of possible 2 running backs in the first round and a little bit of a tight end bump in terms of Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland out of Michigan. So a little bit less on receiver and quarterback, but a little bit of a bump in running back and tight end.
All right, we'll get to Washington and later on in the first round. But are we settled now on Tennessee taking Cam Ward? I mean, that would be a shocker if they either traded the pick or didn't pick him, correct?
It seems it seems far-fetched to think outside that realm at this point, Kevin. It seems some of their free agency moves kind of aligned with where they're thinking of going. They fortified the O-line. They did certain things that just makes you think, the back door that, hey, this is their plan all along. We're going to do the things that we need to do to make it a more nurturing environment for a rookie quarterback to come in and maybe not get the reins day one, but, definitely make it as an easy a transition from collegiate to the pro level as they can. So, Cam Ward, when this process started, it really was a closer race between Cam and Shedeur Sanders. It was like a 2-horse race, but now, Cam's kind of separated himself and Sanders is that prospect. And there's always that lightning rod type prospect where, he could be 2 to the Cleveland Browns or, you could see him going 21 to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think just that wide dynamic of, what he brings to the table. And I like Sanders. I love Dart and Cam Ward. So it's not that, again, that top heavy quarterback class where we're just saying, wow, these guys all look like, elite franchise types, but I still think there's a lot of upside with all these guys.
I don't want to focus too much on the quarterbacks because for the first time around here in a long time, we don't have to worry about that, which is really nice. But what's wrong with Shedeur Sanders for most people that don't like him?
Size-wise, he's not the prototypical 6'4", 240, and not a lot of quarterbacks are. I mean, that's the ideal measurement. I think his personality, and people could say that's, but he's going to speak what's on his mind, and he's not going to shy away from things. And I think his father, we know it's Dion, Hall of Fame, prime time, etc. He's not going to shy away from making his voice known if there's some hiccups in Shedeur Sanders' career and whatnot. I was able to, he did media stuff down at the East West Shrine game when I was down there. He came across as a good kid. He didn't seem standoffish. He didn't seem cocky or arrogant. He just seemed the kid that, he's been around the block. He's been in, the shadow of Dion his entire life. He saw how his father has navigated himself professionally as a player and into the coaching realm. So I think it's just part of that demeanor of, and you could take this good or bad. It's just, he has NFL pedigree. His father is one of the best defensive backs we've ever seen. And he's kind of developed himself. We all know Jackson State, and he's going to Colorado, and he's kind of advanced his game. I like his pocket presence. But I do believe it's more of a, in-house, how's this guy, how are we going to be able to deal with him if things get bad and deal with his father? And that might sound like a tiny spectrum in terms of the big scheme of things. But when you're in a locker room, you're an organization, and you kind of want everybody to be on the right page, keep things in-house. We're not going to say things publicly. If there's a problem, we'll deal with that internally. I don't think that would be the case. And I don't know if it was yesterday or today I read even that he kind of came out with that where, teams may like him, but he's going to shoot it to you straight, and that might rub people the wrong way, or people might be content with that. So, but again, I like Sanders. I don't love Sanders. But I don't dislike him. I don't dislike his attitude or anything of that nature.
Who's the best player in this draft?
Whew. Kevin, I love that question. I do. I think if you went through 32 NFL war rooms, you might get 15 or 10, 12, and 13 different names. I think
really that many different names, because I thought I thought it was between Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter.
Yeah, well, I think it's Carter or Hunter. 15 and 15, 16, but I just think and you can even throw the quarterbacks in there. I mean, Sean Genty, the Boise State. I mean, It's hard to imagine a DB getting that type of, or a running back getting that.
Right.
But, he's considered elite. And I think that's what makes it fun, because when you think of Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter, you look at the Browns at number 2, and then you look at the Giants at number 3. I know the Browns signed Flacco, and then you have the Giants sitting there with 2 veterans now, and Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson. So, do they kind of take quarterback off the board? This is what I'm going to say about picks 2 and 3 between the Giants and the Browns, or Browns 2, Giants 3. I don't know if either one of those teams have that selection on draft night Thursday, but I do believe that Hunter, and this is not some wild, oh wow, Bo's really going off the rocker here in this prediction, but I think it'll be Carter 2. I still think Carter will be 2. I just think he's Travis Hunter is a good receiver. I don't think he's on the Justin Jefferson level, Jamar Chase level, but he's pretty awesome at receiver. Defensive back, I don't know if he's a first-round defensive back. We know he's versatile, 700-plus snaps collegiately at Colorado, Heisman, all those other accolades, and that's awesome. The versatility, there's nobody else like it. Nobody else we've seen in collegiate football that's come out in years. But that said, it's still, you're talking about professional football and being the absolute best. So I think Carter's 2, and then you get into that weird realm where what do the Giants do at 3? And, do they take Hunter? Do they pair him with Malik Neighbors and allow the quarterbacks to hopefully develop around these elite weapons? I had to do a mock draft show last week, and I just kind of went off the realm completely. And I just said, you know what? The Giants took Saquon Barkley in 2018 at number 2 overall, and maybe they duplicate that. They're not shy from taking that quarterback. They've proven it. So maybe they go Sean Genty at number 3. Wow. And that just kind of, then you push Travis Hunter to 4. And it goes back to the receivers, Jamar Chase 4, it's just hard to find, Marvis Harrison Jr. 4, Malik Neighbors 6. It's hard to find a receiver that goes number 2 overall in an entire draft. And again, when we talk about Hunter, we talk about the versatility, but I think as a singular player, if you're going to pick him at either receiver or defensive back, I just don't think he lives up to the eliteness of a receiver prospect that would be the second pick overall. That's where I kind of get, for me, when I do these evaluations, that's where it's in the back of my mind. I'm like, how could they just throw all of what the NFL has known over years, and where do you kind of take these guys and just say, hey, he's versatile. He can play some defensive back, and let's make him the second pick overall.
Washington needs defense. It doesn't mean they'll go defense, because I think running back's a possibility. I think another wide receiver that, they'll probably take best player available unless it's a quarterback, which it probably wouldn't be, or a left tackle. So as you look at them at 29, my first question is, at 29, if they stay there and pick there, are they getting a first-round quality player in this draft? A player that the team's boards would grade out as a first-rounder?
I would say no. To me, what I usually hear that number kind of starts to decrease around 21, where maybe 16 to 21 is that elite, surefire. All the boards basically have these top 15 to 20 guys on their boards. I think where you're picking at the end of the second or end of the first round at 29, you're still getting a heck of a prospect, but you're not getting, I think those, we call them, the blue chip type guys. Yeah. You're getting a guy that you're really going to like and has all the potential as anybody else, and also has all the dissatisfaction of being a bust as any other pick. So, but hey, listen, they've done a heck of a job. And you cover the team, you know them inside and out. The turnaround from last year going into, imagine thinking of this team heading into this process last year on April 11th and thinking about what dire straits they were in. But new ownership, the new quarterback under center, new head coach, and everything has just kind of come to this, magnificent, birth, if you will. It's a renaissance to be a Washington football fan right now. And for the diehards out there, I mean, I grew up a Washington fan back with the Hogs and Gary Clark.
I didn't know that. I don't know that you've ever mentioned that when I've had you on before.
Oh yeah. I mean, and I was always chunky as a child. So Kirby Puckett, John Riggins, Charles Barkley were always my favorite athletes because, you always want to emulate who do you pretend you want to be. And by no means, I'm still the shortest person in the world. And now I'm just short and, I want to say I'm skinny, but now I'm just a short, tiny person. But, I was always I wasn't chunky, but yeah, so I loved Riggins, Darryl Green. I could go on and on. Again, nothing that your audience and the people in the area wouldn't, I'm not going to throw a name out there that's but yeah. But I love seeing it. I mean, I remember going down to RFK a couple times as a kid with my buddies and being able to kind of witness the game there, which was an exciting time.
Yeah, it was the best. Hopefully one day, new stadium downtown, it'll feel the same. All right, so they stay at 29. Defense is an emphasis here in this offseason, but I don't think anything's off the table. What's available for them at 29?
I think Emeka Ebuka from Ohio State, I think he could be a guy there. We know Terry McLaurin is, in that contract year. So you could look at receiver. I think some of those type of guys will be around when they pick 29th. And I think you could look at Josh Simmons O-line, and we're talking defense now. To flip it, a guy like Walter Nolan, he's the Ole Miss. I love him as a prospect. He's one of my absolute favorites. But he's a guy that I think you could see go from 17 to 38 in terms of his draft window. So I think he's a guy that could be there on their radar. And then Jahdae Barron, the DB. Those are just a few of the guys that I think they would be fortunate to get at that spot. But I rather have the guys that I think you're fortunate to get than thinking about the guys that you really don't want so much and they're not exciting to you. I think you always kind of want to get the thing that you can have rather than the thing that you expected.
Yeah, a guy like Nolan's more of a D tackle, and I'm wondering if there would be an edge at 29 that you would envision being at least close to some of the other names you mentioned as best player available. Like, would a Shamar Stewart fall? Would a Pierce fall? Would a Green fall to 29?
I think Pierce is that Pierce is a freakish athlete. We know that, but I think if there's a few guys in this draft where I really don't know in terms of their how high their ceiling or their floor. I think Pierce is that number one guy. I think athletically you could say, wow, this kid is phenomenal. But then you watch him, you see the career. He's like, is he that guy that can hold up every play? So I think he's a guy that we talk about because of his numbers and his potential. But does that relate to a high draft pick on draft day? So I think he could be a guy at 29. I don't think Green will be there. I think Green will be top 15, 16. I think, by the time the Falcons or Cardinals go, he'll be off the board. Nick Scarleton, the Texas A&M edge rusher. I think he's a guy that could be in that window. So I would say, Scarleton from Texas A&M or Pierce could be that guy. And again, he's a high, maybe a Leonard Floyd type. And there's nothing wrong with Leonard Floyd, but I just think a long, lengthy, very athletic guy. And I'm sure if Washington could get that Leonard Floyd, I know he went a lot higher when he was taken by the Bears several years ago, but nonetheless, he's turned into a very solid prospect. Solid NFL player.
Who are the running backs after Genty worth, using a late first round pick on?
Well, I mean, Amari Hampton, North Carolina kid. I mean, he's just a powerhouse, a bruiser. When you think of physicality downhill, just demolish opponents, he's your guy. without a question. I think I think he's going to be a top 20 guy. You look at Denver, you look at Dallas at 12. I think those are two key spots where he could land. But I would be shocked if Hampton is there at 29, and I would even be a little surprised if Washington took him. I would be shocked. But I think after Hampton, then the Ohio State guys and Henderson and Junkins. You got Bashal Tutin, the running back from Virginia. He's kind of like that Tree Cohen, and he also went to North Carolina A&T, so you got that connection. R.J. Harvey, Damian Martinez out of Miami, another big bruiser. But those are going to be, day two guys. But I think your two running backs on day one, Genty, of course, is a guarantee. And I pretty much think Hampton's a guarantee. I think for Hampton, it's just finding that team that says, okay, we're going to commit to a running back in round one. And I think that could be Dallas. I think it could be Denver. I don't think the Chargers so much because they signed Najee quickly in free agency. So it's kind of be like a, double dose of, one of your big prize free agent signings, and then you draft a running back in round one. So I don't think the Chargers would go there, but and I would elect to think that Washington doesn't go there. But if he was around at 29, it'd be hard to say, hey, let's go in another direction. Put it that way.
I really think the running back in the first round thing has to be a guy that you believe can be Barkley, that you believe can be Bijan Robinson.
Yeah.
It's got Jahmyr Gibbs. It's got to be a guy that has massive impact, especially in this draft. If not, wait. Like you said, like you mentioned a couple of the guys that I like. I love Martinez. I don't know if he's there day 3, but you get a swing at him maybe on night 2. I'm bringing up running back because I do think there will be an interest, and I think Washington will end up taking a running back in this draft, if one that they really like falls. And so with that in mind, I mean, after Genty, I maybe Hampton, but do you see any of these guys as potential Saquon Barkley kind of impact running backs?
I think right now, no. And 2 years from now, as one of these guys develop, Henderson, his speed, there's lots of things to like about these guys, but I think late first round and to think that they could become a Barkley. I mean, that's it. Remember Barkley was the second pick of the draft, him coming out of Penn State. I mean, there was no question that, this guy was the guy. This guy was going to be a superstar in the league. I mean, very rare times you feel that confident about a guy. I think Barkley, a unanimous decision that we all kind of went down that direction. What it is, Hampton, like Genty is that guy that you mentioned. He is that Gibbs type guy. He is that Bijan Robinson guy who can do so many things. Hampton's a different animal. He's a bruiser, and he can catch, but he's not going to be that LaDainian Tomlinson type. He's not going to be a Marshawn Falk, versatile Swiss Army knife. If you want a Marshawn Lynch type guy, you want a guy that you're just going to be able to hammer and just hand off and just pummel defenses. And there's a good thing about that. Just say he goes to Dallas, you got you're handing off to a guy that's just punishing the inside of a team. You're bringing in your linebackers. You have to execute your safety to go up and play in the box. Now you're leaving the back door of a CeeDee Lamb, etc. Open. Those are the little things that where the running back has an impact, not only running the ball, but in terms of how you're going to play the back end, in terms of what do these guys do defensively to shore up the back end when you got to commit so much to the interior. But I like Hampton. I'd put it this, Kevin. I'd go as far as to say there might be a few war rooms in the National Football League that have Hampton 1. I wouldn't dismiss that. And we'll never know that. They'll never tell us, and I'll never have the access to find out. But I wouldn't be shocked if there's a couple teams in the National Football League that have Hampton as their 1. That's how much I like Hampton.
I looked at this the other day. I think 4 out of the last 5 running backs taken in the top half of the draft, and there haven't been many. But the list is like Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Gibbs, and Bijan Robinson. So like top half of the first round running backs over the last 5, 6 years, 7 years or whatever, going back to McCaffrey, have actually worked out. Real quickly, 2 more and I'll let you run, and I appreciate the time as always. they traded for Deebo Samuel, but Deebo's on a 1-year deal, and they're not going to extend him. Wide receiver, I don't think is out of the question if the player is the best player on their board. I would assume McMillan's long gone. How do you have the receivers after McMillan, and if you assume Travis Hunter is a wide receiver, how do you have them sort of ranked, and are they first rounders?
Yeah, well, I have Hunter 1, I have McMillan 2, I have Luther Burden 3, I have Kyle Williams, the receiver, 4, and then I have Emeka 5, and then Marcus Golden out of Texas 6. I think the last 3, and you could even throw a Trey Harris out of Ole Miss there. I think the last 3 that I said, I think those guys will be on the board. And last year, looking at my numbers, you had 7 receivers in round 1 last year. I think the over under for me would be 3.5. I think that's the number where I think you're going to get 3, 4 is a push. And, I'd be surprised if we see it. I just don't think, and the reason I say this is I think there's just so many different opinions on which guy is the one, absent of Hunter, which guy is, can do this or that. And when you have an unclear identification amongst all the draft pundits, you could, I could ask you your top 5, you tell me, I'll tell you my top 5, and we could go down the list. And I don't think there's going to be an adjacent, a domino effect of everybody having that same type of top 5 in that particular order. We might have the 5 same names, but again, you're talking about the number 1 receiver who should be the first guy off the board compared to my 5 guy who might not even be a first round. That's a pretty big discrepancy in opinion. So I think that's where the 3.5 for me comes into play. I just don't know how teams are going to look at these guys on draft night and say, hey, just say, Luther Burden is better than Oregon's Derek tackle, Derek Harmon. Those are the things that I look at in terms of value, and then you can get these guys on day 2. And real quick, I believe I misquoted. I think Martinez is definitely a day 2 guy. I was thinking 3rd round, definitely not a day 3 guy in terms of 4, 5, 6, and 7.
Yeah, well, night 2 is 2nd and 3rd round, exactly. In talking about the receivers, I'm actually really surprised that Luther Burden isn't obviously the number 3 receiver in this class. In terms of just pure production and watching him, every time you turned on Missouri, it's like that guy's a pro. And that guy is going to be difficult with the ball in his hands in space. But apparently, after McMillan, there's a wide range. I mean, you threw out a guy in Kyle Williams that I haven't even heard, into the mix there. Egbuka, Golden, clearly. But anyway, all right, last one. Give me the guy that you love that maybe people aren't talking about that you think will end up going a lot higher than, right now the mocks say he will?
The guy that will go higher that I love. Ooh. Well, I do love Walter Nolan, but I don't think he's going to go extremely, extremely high. So that kind of eliminates him. You know what? It's not a sneaky name, but I will say this guy. I do think he goes in the top 10. I think Will Johnson, the defensive back out of Michigan, if he didn't miss time this past season,
right.
I think when you look at him as a whole, I think it's all there. And he reminds me of the year where Derek Stingley snuck up and surpassed Sauce Gardner in the draft. I think Stingley went 3, Sauce went 4 or 5. But at the time, it was Sauce. But, you think of Stingley, LSU. I think the pedigree of Michigan, that defense, and I just like Will Johnson as a whole. Big, long, tough defensive back. I think he's a guy that, we're not talking about him as a top 10 pick, but I think, and one of my last mocks I did is, I kind of tried to go crazy a little bit, was, the Raiders. Gentry goes 3 to the Giants, and you got the Raiders sitting there, the running back's gone. Pete Carroll, Legion of Boom, Cam Chancellor, Richard Sherman. You bring another big, tough defensive guy in terms of Will Johnson to kind of begin that back end upgrade that the Raiders kind of have lacked for years and years, probably since Charles Woodson and the other DB that they had for a long time that it's escaping my name. And even if it did come to my mind, I wouldn't be able to pronounce it. Duke Bay, or I just forget.
Oh yeah. I know who you're talking about. By the way,
Yeah.
on Will Johnson, this time last year, I mean, he was a consensus top 10 pick. So the injury definitely has pushed it back, and I don't know if there are other things as well. Great stuff, Bo. Really appreciate it. Guys, you can follow Bo on X on Twitter at Bo Marchionte, MarChionte, and he owns and runs collegetopro.com. Thanks for doing this. Good to catch up.
Kevin, you're the best. Have a great week.
Up next, former and longtime NFL executive Andrew Brandt will jump on with us to talk about the crazy story from over the weekend involving Tennessee quarterback Nico Amaliava. That's next.
All right, Jalen Ramsey and the Dolphins are mutually set to explore a trade. Ramsey is set to receive $25.1 million fully guaranteed in 2025. Ramsey played in all 17 games, tallying just 2 interceptions. He ranked 16th overall among NFL corners in 2024 per PFF. Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders will have their numbers retired by the Colorado Buffaloes. Shedeur completed 71% of his passes through 2 seasons at Colorado and threw for 64 touchdowns to just 13 interceptions. Travis Hunter led an unprecedented Heisman campaign on both sides of the football, racking up over 1,400 snaps in his 2024 season. Last night, Paige Beckers went number 1 overall in the WNBA draft to the Dallas Wings. There's no surprise there. The Mystics held 3 of the top 6 picks. They drafted Sonia Citron, a guard from Notre Dame, Kiki Ariafin, forward from USC. She played most of her career at Stanford. And at the 6th pick, Georgia Amore, guard from Kentucky, was drafted to the Mystics. The NBA play-in starts tonight. The Hawks take on the Magic at 7:30, and the Grizzlies take on the Warriors at 10 p.m. Tonight, the Caps take on the Islanders at 7:45 on the Team 980, and the Nats last night lost to Paul Skeens and the Pirates by a score of 10-3. Skeens pitched 6 innings, 6 Ks, giving up just 1 earned run. Nats Pirates tonight at 6:40 on 106.7 The Fan, and that's what's trending.
All right, joining me right now, one of my favorites to have on the show, Andrew Brandt, former NFL executive for many years in Green Bay, the current executive director of the Morad Center for the Study of Sports Law at Villanova. Andrew joins me right now. I'll get to the reason that I reached out to you, which is the situation over the weekend with the quarterback at Tennessee, which I follow you on Twitter and read a lot of what you write. But, with 9 days left before the draft and your history of being involved in so many of them for the Packers, and by the way, over the years, so many good stories from Andrew, especially about the 2005 draft and Aaron Rodgers. I mean, I think one of my favorite stories from you is that in that draft, you guys wanted to trade out of the first round because you didn't see anybody worthy at 24 of a first round grade, and no one wanted to trade up. So you selected the best player on your board, and that was Aaron Rodgers, even though you had Brett Favre. I love that story. One of the things I don't think I've ever asked you about that draft is, do you remember your reaction, or just the organization's reaction, the Packers' reaction, to what Washington did that year, Andrew, which was Joe Gibbs, first year back, they decide to trade up to number 25 after you selected Rodgers to pick Jason Campbell. Do you remember what your reaction was to Washington trading just one spot behind you and selecting the Auburn quarterback, Jason Campbell?
Yeah, always good to be with you, Kevin. I think the obvious answer to that question is, in the moments following the drafting of Aaron Rodgers, I was oblivious to everything else in the world, including the Reds, whatever they were called then, drafting Jason Campbell. I realized that obviously later. But as I've told you, and I've shared this many times, the moments after picking Aaron Rodgers were moments I will never forget, even more than the picking of Aaron Rodgers. Because in those few moments, maybe even 2 minutes, one, I get a call from Brett Favre's agent, livid, furious, what the F. Coach gets a call from Brett Favre. We have a draft party going on below us of 1,000 people at Lambeau Field. And the booing in that room literally shook our souls, literally shook our room. And ESPN, NFL Network, F, worst pick ever. I mean, it was just on and on and on. And
yeah, you've told me that many times, but Favre was livid, right?
Of course. And for 3 years, I received calls every week. Andrew, do you know what it's like to come into work every day and sit next to your replacement? And I said, yeah, Brett, I don't know what to say. We're trying to prepare for the future. We don't know when that's going to be. So anyway, Jason Campbell came to mind because I don't know what went into that pick, but I know that Siegel, the agent, would call me all the time. It's like, when are you going to do the Rodgers contract? I'm like, I don't know. He goes, when you do it, I'll do the Campbell contract, because I don't want to do it before you do the Rodgers contract.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. And just copy it, and a little less money. That's the way the deals were done those days.
That's so interesting. The other thing I don't know that I've ever asked you, Mike Sherman was the head coach, right?
Yeah.
At the time.
Mm-hmm.
How quickly before the coaching staff realized that Aaron Rodgers was going to be the real deal?
Well, I just, I could sense there was obviously some liking to Aaron right away. We saw his ball skills, which I think to this day are the best ever. Mm-hmm. We saw some of that right away, but he was, we made a change the next year, and there's a lot of reasons, don't need to get into that. So they only got 1 year with Aaron as a backup, and then McCarthy came in and had 2 years as Aaron as a backup before elevating him when Brett retired. So we knew pretty quick he was a favorite around the office, and again, very hard to say that because we love Brett.
Right.
So we just, the 3-year wait, I've staked my claim in the ground, will never, ever happen again after Jordan Love. It's only the Packers. No first-round quarterback will ever wait, I think, more than half a year now.
Yeah.
They're just, imagine these Shedeur, Cam Ward. No way. No way. They'll be starting day one. So that was unique.
It was, for sure. I actually yesterday, I think on the show after, and I know you watched it because I saw that you were tweeting during it, the incredible Masters finish from Sunday. I actually compared Rory's Sunday, the up and down nature of it, the unbelievable shots and then some of the worst that you'll ever see in a 4.5 hour period. I was trying to equate it to like a football example, and I said, it's kind of similar to some of the games that Brett Favre played. It's like, oh my God, look at that arm, look at that throw. And then, 2 series later, what are you doing? Why would you throw it there? He really was, he's a Hall of Famer, but there was a feast or famine element to his game.
The Masters reminds, as I've gotten older in life, I watch less sports. I don't watch less games, but I watch less of the first half of games because it reminds you that what's really important is fourth quarters. And for Rory, last few holes, it's just everything else is kind of window dressing. It's like I've learned to sort of prioritize my time, even a great NBA playoff game or a NHL hockey game. I'm like, all right, I'll show up for the last quarter of the game.
Yeah. Rory still had an unbelievable seesaw up and down over the last. It was
amazing. Yeah,
it was amazing. By the way, what do you think happens with Aaron Rodgers?
I have no inside information. I just feel like this wait, to me, is not about Steelers or another team or Saints. Or this wait is about playing or not playing. So, my guess is it's really 50-50. He has the Steelers waiting for him, but if he was all in on playing, my sense is he probably would have done that. But my sense is he's not all in yet on playing again.
I want to get to Nico Amaliava here in a moment. But real quickly, because Washington is no longer in the market for a quarterback for the first time in forever. They're also drafting in a very unfamiliar position, number 29 overall. You and others have told me over the years that typically, you don't have 32 first-round graded players. That number is, somewhere between 18 and 24, depending on the year. When you're picking 29, and let's just say that you've got 22 players in this draft with true first-round grades, are you immediately thinking about trading back and looking for those opportunities?
No, I don't think so. I think, again, I just talked about the Rodgers example. We had 18 first-round graded players.
18 that year.
Yeah, and 17 were off the board in the first 19 picks. So we were staring at Aaron's name. But, I think it's different for every team. And that was unique, Kevin, because a lot of years we'd have 18 or 20 players, and by the end of the first round, there's still a couple names up there.
Right.
So I don't think Washington is necessarily going to lose out on a first-round graded player because they only have 21 or 22 first-round grades. And then if they do, that's a decision like I experienced where do you dip into your second-round grades? Do you look to trade back? And need does come into that. So if you're 29, your board is out in the first round, but high second-round pick has a need for you, you may just pull that trigger.
I've got a quick hypothetical that we actually discussed earlier in the show, and I think we've discussed it a few times. Running back all of a sudden is a position that is being viewed differently here over the last couple of years. Do you agree with that?
Differently how? I mean, the Barkley and Jacobs and Henry thing changed the older running back picture, yes.
Just that we've seen elite running backs here in recent years, whether it's McCaffrey, whether it's obviously Saquon Barkley, whether it's, a Bijan Robinson or a Gibbs. The idea that you should never, we went through a phase there where drafting running backs in the first round was considered to be the wrong thing to do when it's a position that you could easily find on night 2 or day 3. But now we've got potentially 2 or 3 that will go in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, it's that if you tell me that it's not quote unquote generational or elite or whatever the word is, yeah, I'd say wait.
Yes.
But if your evaluation has the Boise kid, I don't know, like whatever that word is, like the Lions did with Jahmyr Gibbs. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I look at my personal opinion on first round is get the players who give you the biggest advantage cap-wise. So in other words, running back is a low top value position. Even Barkley at $20 million, that's low compared to quarterback, compared to O-line, compared to D-line, compared to shutdown corner.
And wide receiver,
so,
of course, yeah.
Yeah, well, receiver is an inefficiency in the market in my mind.
Yeah.
Because I think you can still get those guys later in the draft. So I would always go, the big time positions, because look at what you're saving. You're getting a guy for $5 million a year when the top of the market is $35 million a year. Running back, you're getting a guy for $5 million a year. The top of the market is like $12 million a year. So those are the ways I look at it.
Yeah. The hypothetical was, and I think maybe you kind of gave the answer, if the best player available for Washington at 29 on their board is a running back, but they don't view that running back to be generational, you don't take him, even though he's your best player available.
That's my feeling, yes.
Yeah. All right. Let's get to the story of Nico Amaliava, the quarterback at Tennessee from last year, who decided prior to spring practice and the spring weekend to hold out, and it didn't work out for him. As some of you may know, and those of you that don't, Tennessee decided to move on from him. He was a good quarterback last year, really good. I didn't think elite level. He had some rough moments, including in the playoff, but Tennessee did make it to the playoffs. So I know you have followed this story and you have thoughts on it, so I'll just give you the floor to, give everybody sort of the situation at Tennessee last week, how it got resolved, and what your thoughts are about it.
Well, let me say this, full disclosure, I have a lot of jobs. I've picked up a couple more over the past year because colleges are coming to people like me and saying, help us. Yeah. Help us. Because college sports at a big time level has become pro sports. Now, some are hiring GMs like my former colleague, Mike Lombardi. I don't have an interest in that. I don't want to move somewhere and be a college GM, but I'm consulting with a couple big schools I cannot name, and I'm really going through how to deal with this. The transfer portal is a nightmare. And the reason we have an unlimited transfer portal, which is twice a year in football, which is crazy, is because people like me, lawyers have challenged transfer portal restrictions at every turn, and lawyers and players have won at every turn. So all the people listening that lament the transfer portal, if you're a judge and a lawyer comes before you and says, Joe Athlete cannot transfer without sitting out. Joe Athlete cannot transfer more than once. But Susie, chemistry major, can, or Jimmy, engineering major, can. The judges are like, well, of course. There should be no restrictions on transfer and playing. And that's what's happened. And now we have, for reasons that go back long ago, we have two transfer portals because they on football, instead of 160 day, they moved it to 45 days and 10 days or something like that. And what you have is players like Nico that saw the market in January, the first portal, pass him by from a year ago when he signed. So the top of market $2 million quarterback, which he was, the top of market is now $3.5 to $4 million.
Yeah.
And he's like, I can get that. Are you going to give me that, or should I go try to get it? And Tennessee finally just said no. You can look at it as holdout. You can look at it as a product of the new system. And everything I've been covering on the House settlement and bringing some semblance of structure to college sports, I have to say none of this will affect the transfer portal. It will institute a salary cap. It'll institute rules on scholarships and rosters. It'll institute back pay for athletes who didn't get NIL, but it has nothing to do with the transfer portal. The only way you can solve this, which I know college student athletes advocates hate, is an antitrust exemption in Congress, because that would eliminate the lawsuits. Right now, anything you do to limit movement among college athletes is going to be illegal.
And
now,
it
the way
didn't
it's not
matter
illegal,
it didn't matter in his case, because it seems to not matter with coaches, and holdouts happen all the time in the NFL, that he actually had a commitment and a contract to play in 2025 for Tennessee.
It did not. And when I'm doing these contracts now for the schools I'm advising, it's all 1 year. I mean, this is a 1 year system. Nobody anticipates players for more than 1 year. You could have a locked in number in 2026, but the guy wants to leave, he's going to leave. It's like you don't want to give a player option with no downside for the player. So we're all doing 1 year deals. I don't know how this deal was done, 4-year deal I read, but that has no weight, because transfer anytime you want. Now, I know a lot of people are saying, well, good for Tennessee, and the public sentiment seems to be on their side.
Right.
But there's also a lot of people saying good for Nico, because he didn't create the system. He's just taking advantage of the system. And that's the real story here is how a top of market $2 million went to top of market $4 million overnight.
Yeah.
I mean, that is amazing. I know, you say $4 million for a quarterback, that's pittance for NFL quarterbacks, but the market for a college quarterback 5 years ago was zero.
Right.
It's like, wow, this thing is exploding. And I don't know, frankly, if the revenue cap is going to stop some of this.
Well, let's go there. Andrew Brandt is joining us at Andrew Brandt on X on Twitter. So you brought up the House settlement, this, institution of a salary cap for college sports of, I think, $20.5 million. So let's start with the basics. First of all, has the House settled on this? Has it passed yet?
Yeah, not getting too legalese. There was a hearing for final approval in front of the judge last week. It did not get her final approval yet. She has asked the lawyers, and when I say lawyers for the plaintiffs that sued the NCAA and lawyers for the NCAA, to respond to a few things about roster limits, about whether players in the future are going to be bound by this. Bottom line, which is the question I get asked most, I do think it will pass, and it will go into effect July 1, which is the academic year. What is happening now is a lot of these big schools that have the money are front-loading before July 1, because anything you pay now is off cap, and the cap goes into effect.
We're in an uncapped 2011 situation in college sports. That's hysterical. But $20.5 million is the number. But like you said, and I want people to be clear on this, this is separate from NIL. This does not impact the transfer portal. $20.5 million in a salary cap is the max you can go to. And so, all the Power 4 schools will go that way. Let's talk about, first of all, because we just went through this in a conversation here about the new basketball coach at Villanova, Kevin Willard, at Maryland, and what he was looking for in terms of the percentage of that cap to go to the basketball program. How it'll be for the schools and the athletic departments to determine where that $20.5 million goes, correct?
Yes. And I'm advising a couple of schools that may, you see some things out there in the media that some schools will do 75% for football, 15% for basketball, 10% for everyone else. There's no mandates on that. So a basketball-heavy school could go heavier or whatever it may be. One thing I'll address about Villanova and the Big East that doesn't have big-time football, this feeling that, they can go crazy, to build a basketball team now because their 20.5 can be spent mostly on basketball. Let's just be clear. You have to have the money.
Yeah, exactly. Right. You got to have the big, football TV contract to actually have.
I think there's a misconception of this settlement, and it sounds preposterous, but I actually have run into smart people who think this. That $20.5 million is going to rain down from the sky to every athletic department. No. This is not new money. This is money that they have already been strapped to get. Now, I know the Georgias and Alabamas and Penns. Listen, I'm not talking about them. But what people don't realize about college sports is that a lot of athletic departments, when you talk about revenue sharing,
don't make money.
There's no revenue to share.
Exactly.
They're being subsidized by the president. The president of the university is saying, I know our athletic department's losing money, but we'll help.
Right.
And people don't realize that's the majority, vast majority.
Well, Andrew, for many years, when there's been this screaming of you got to pay players beyond, the value of, tuition, room, board, the value of, by the way, the marketing platform that is college sports for your next job, if it's professional, and the brand that you get to create before you ever enter the NBA or the NFL. No one's ever actually quantified that to where I've seen it before. But to your point, I don't think a lot of these people over the years have understood that. Take the Ohio States and Alabamas and Penn States out of the equation. Most athletic departments are not making money. They don't have the money to pay the players. Now, I have one question that I have not heard answered yet. Maybe you just did it a little while ago, but I'm not sure. Once these players, let's call them football players, 75% of the $20.5 million is going to the football program, and they divvy it up among the players. Are the players getting the full scholarships as well?
Yep.
They are. Okay.
So let me be clear. 20.5 represents an average of 22% of the Power 4 athletic department revenue. So if you look at it in pro terms, CBA, the NFL, NBA, hockey, et cetera, are basically 50-50. And then you say, well, 22% for college, that doesn't sound great. But if you throw in the scholarships, the Alston money, the Pell Grants, the room and board, the tuition, they're getting pretty close to the NFL, NBA 50-50. College players are actually going to get 50-50. Now, it's not dollars like money. That's going to be 22%. But, it's almost 50-50.
Yeah, and I don't, you're super smart, and I've wondered this over the years. To me, the most incredible value to college players playing college sports is the marketing platform. The guy that doesn't play in the NCAA tournament or doesn't play at big time college football may get drafted, but they have no endorsement value, no brand when they enter the NFL or the NBA. So in addition to sort of that jump in drafting position, which equates to more money in your rookie deal, the endorsement opportunities aren't there without the college sports marketing platform. And I've never seen anybody quantify the value of that to a college athlete.
That's a lot of athletic directors and presidents get frustrated at that, because the name on the front of the jersey is a big part of the branding, big part of even for Cooper Flag. I mean, this is what if someone comes in from a small college that people haven't heard of, they're not going to get the same branding opportunities, even if they're the same player. And that can be frustrating for administrators. I think the natural tendency of the public is, oh, these guys have been so exploited. But if you listen to people who know, in my situation, I'm at Villanova. We have 24 sports. 24 sports. One makes money. One.
Yeah.
So it's got to fund 23 other sports? No, it can't do that. So this is what most athletic departments are.
All right, last one. With respect to the House settlement and when we get this salary cap, and to your point, just so everybody understands, not every school is going to have $20.5 million to spend. They can go up to that, but you got to have the money. You know, you got to be a part of the Big Ten, of the SEC, and the football contract, TV contracts that come with it. But how will there be any regulation to the other revenue bucket, which is NIL?
Yeah, that's the real question. So there's going to be additional NIL beyond the 20.5 is direct payments from the university.
Correct.
So that's where I call NIL now means now it's legal. So everything under the table years ago, this SMU death penalty, now legal. We are paying our athletes directly. But then, as you said, there's this other additional NIL where you have to submit to a clearinghouse going to be set up by the NCAA, anything over $600 to see if it's fair market value. This is where the abuse will come in. Now, they say they're going to monitor this, cap compliance, but yet to be seen. You know, who's to say showing up at a birthday party is $500 or $5,000, $50,000? You know, this is where it's going to get tricky. And what are they doing now? The NCAA is loading in thousands and thousands of endorsement deals into AI. So when you submit, I'm going to go $10,000 to go sign an autograph at a shoe company or something. It has to reach fair market value. So this is going to be how they're trying to monitor this. I just think this is gargantuan. The NFL had 20 people in cap compliance and 3 or 4 people per team. Imagine what's going to happen here.
Well, it sounds like great opportunities for people like you, which is great, but such an interesting topic. And you know what I did find myself thinking, Andrew, I thought this was going to be a major turnoff for me over the last couple of years. But ultimately, once the games started, Saturdays in the fall, you know, as the year went on, you grew to understand who played for whom. The games mattered, even in college basketball, which has become a 1 month, out of the calendar sport. You get to the tournament, the games matter. I still find myself enjoying the two sports, college football and college basketball, almost as much as I used to. To me, the bigger impact for me has been the major conference reshuffling and adapting to that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other part of this, the expenses, especially on non-revenue sports, where you have field hockey teams going across country, spending more money than they'll make all year on one trip. And, I'll leave you with this. The NCAA is not meant to do this. The NCAA cannot oversee Alabama, Ohio State football and Bowdoin field hockey. I mean, that's what they're doing. So, I think there's going to be some other governing body for the two big sports. I don't know what it'll be. It won't be pro, but it won't be college. It'll be something else down the road.
Thanks for doing this, as always. Always enjoy it. Hope you're well.
Thanks. I know people are asking about newsletter. Go to mysunday7.com. Reels, I do all about this on Instagram. Andrew Brandt, too. That's a good start.
mysunday7.com, or is it sunday7.com?
mysunday7.com.
There you go. mysunday7.com for Andrew's newsletter. And you can link to andrew-brandt.com on his X account at Andrew Brandt. Thanks as always. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Kevin.
Andrew Brandt, everybody. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. Really like having Andrew Brandt on the show. Involved in so much and has been involved in so much. And I think like one of the things that has been interesting to me over the years is all of the people over the years that have screamed and yelled about players, getting paid. And Now they are. And by the way, college athletes, football and basketball players in particular, they have annual free agency. In the case of, multiple transfer portals during a season, like 2 in football, you basically have semi-annual, unrestricted free agency. No athlete professionally has anywhere near what college athletes have right now. And like Andrew mentioned, the House settlement and the salary cap implementation, if it happens, and it looks like it will, is not going to impact the transfer portal. It's not going to impact really NIL. That's a separate revenue bucket altogether. But, over the years, like the thing to me that was always incredibly misunderstood and very understated, if not ignored by, big name people, out there who, write about and talk about college sports, was the value proposition all along, without getting paid. They're getting paid now. And I've always felt like name, image, and likeness, there should be some ability to benefit from that. Not the way it's happened with collectives and essentially just being paid directly for maybe, a birthday party show up, once a year. But, I go back and I've got an example to kind of share with you. If you go back to the 2019 NBA draft, the 2019 NBA draft was led by Zion Williamson, number 1 overall. Now, Andrew said, even a guy like Cooper Flagg has benefited from playing college football financially, not because of the direct payments he's received, but, what he is viewed heading to the end, how he's viewed heading to the NBA. Zion Williamson had brand recognition. He's the exception to the rule. I would put Cooper Flagg kind of into that conversation, the exception to the rule. The rule, though, is a guy like Ty Jerome. Ty Jerome played point guard at Virginia. They won the national championship in 2019. Ty Jerome wasn't anywhere near a first-round talent or first-round projection before that season started and really at any point during the regular season. Maybe a second-round guy, maybe not drafted at all. But Ty Jerome, who was playing for a team that was great, that was featured heavily during the month of March, and then ultimately won the national championship, ended up getting selected in the first round. The profile, the draft profile, and then beyond that, the marketing profile and exposure that he got playing college basketball made him so much more money at the next level than he would have ever gotten had he not played college basketball. Like Andrew said, the value in college sports is on the front of the uniform, not the back of it. These players come and go, and now they come and go annually from one team to another. The contract that he signed as a rookie back in 2019 guaranteed him basically $10 million because first-round contracts are guaranteed. You're going to tell me that he could have gotten that, working out with, Uncle Johnny, who was a former, Division III player and played overseas for a few years, or went to Europe and played professionally and made money? No, college sports is still a massive marketing platform for these players. And that was the part for all of those years that for whatever reason, and he said athletic directors and people have been complaining about that. That's the value to the player before they got paid. The value is I'm going to use this marketing platform to get a lot more money than I would have gotten without it at the next level. By the way, I'm not even getting into the jobs that aren't professional sports related that players who are, exposed in sort of a marketing sense in college football, college basketball end up getting access to because they're well known, outside of professional sports. You put all that together, the players were getting value in the millions of dollars before they started to get paid. It just wasn't studied or quantified to that effect. I mean, room, board, tuition, free training, free wellness, free healthcare, free tutoring, all of that stuff, free coaching, all of that stuff, equated to over, if you stayed for 4 years, probably $500,000, especially if you were an out-of-state student, somewhere in that neighborhood. But the marketing platform could potentially be worth millions versus not playing college sports, because the value in college sports, and it hasn't been emphasized enough over the years, I don't think, is, as Andrew said, on the front of the uniform. These players come and go. The brands are the schools and the programs themselves. Not one single player is Kentucky basketball. Kentucky basketball is Kentucky basketball. Ohio State football is Ohio State football. That's the brand. They are taking advantage of that brand. The schools aren't taking advantage of the player that comes for 2 or 3 years or 4 years and plays for an existing brand. It doesn't matter. That ship has sailed. Players are getting paid, and they're going to start getting paid directly through this house settlement and a salary cap. But as Andrew explained, the maximum on the salary cap is going to be $20.5 million. But that's only going to apply to the schools that have that money to pay its athletes. And we're talking about Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Power 4, the ACC schools, in which the television deals that they've cut for their conference are in the billions of dollars. And the schools are getting a ridiculous sum of money from those TV contracts. And yes, it's the football TV contracts 1, the basketball TV contracts a distant 2, which is why, in addition to football just having many more players and it being a much more expensive sport to support, football will end up getting, Andrew said, on average, 75% of that salary cap, at places that actually have $20.5 million to spend. Men's basketball will come in at around 15%, and then 10% goes everywhere else. I would think third in line would probably be women's basketball at most places, but 10% for everybody else. And what basketball coaches have been fighting for, we just went through it with Kevin Willard at Maryland, is more than 15%. They want more, especially at places where basketball is more important than football, even though there's recognition that it's the football TV deals that are making it possible to sort of get to that top end of the salary cap. But the Tennessee situation with Nico Muliava last week was so interesting because, as Andrew mentioned, the reaction overwhelmingly from college football fans, from Tennessee football fans in particular, is good riddance. You committed. Yeah, the price went up, and if you were a professional, you'd have the ability to hold out. No. As a college player, you can hold out too, because they have multiple transfer portals. And yeah, he had committed to another year of football at a much lower number than quarterbacks are getting this year. He probably shouldn't have committed to 2025. He did. But the overwhelming reaction is he's the problem. But he was just taking advantage of the system that's in place. Now, for me, I don't know that he's a $4 million quarterback or even a $3 million quarterback. We'll see if another school is willing to give him what he wanted. Right now, there appears to be interest, but it's not sizzling interest in this player, which I'm sure he and the people around him thought there would be. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com.
All right, trending now, Jalen Ramsey and the Dolphins are mutually set to explore a trade. Ramsey is set to receive $25 million fully guaranteed in 2025. Ramsey played in all 17 games last season, tallying just 2 interceptions. He ranked 16th overall among NFL corners in 2024 per Football Focus. Travis Hunter and Shadur Sanders will have their numbers retired by the Colorado Buffaloes. Sanders completed 71% of his passes through 2 seasons at Colorado and threw for 64 touchdowns to just 13 interceptions. Travis Hunter led an unprecedented Heisman campaign on both sides of the football, racking up over 1,400 snaps in his 2024 season. Last night, Paige Beckers went number 1 overall in the WNBA draft to the Dallas Wings. There's no real surprise there. The Mystics held 3 of the top 6 picks. They drafted with the number 3 pick, Sonia Citron, a guard out of Notre Dame. Number 4, Kiki Iriafin, a forward from USC, and Georgia Amore at number 6, a guard from Kentucky. Tonight, the NBA play-in starts. The Hawks take on the Magic in Orlando at 7:30. The Grizzlies will take on the Warriors at 10. The Capitals will take on the Islanders tonight in their penultimate game of the season at 7:45 right here on the Team 980. And the Washington Nationals last night lost to Paul Skeens and the Pirates by a score of 10-3. Skeens pitched 6 innings, 6 strikeouts, giving up just 1 earned run. Nats Pirates at 6:40 on 106.7 The Fan, and that's what's trending.
You'll hear my conversation with Zabe coming up in about 10 minutes. So ESPN.com did two things today. Number one, they identified the teams that are most likely to try to trade up in round one, and then the teams most likely to trade down from where they are in the first round. And Washington's one of those teams they identify as a team that will be looking to trade down, and out of the first round for them. And what's written here is the Commanders check two boxes in identifying trade down candidates. They are selecting late enough in the first round that a team selecting early on day two might give them a call. And they have just 5 picks in total following all of their offseason moves. In other words, they are in good position to trade out and should be willing, since this class is regarded as deeper rather than top heavy. Moving down would give Washington more chances to add depth at positions of need, including edge rusher and wide receiver. So that's number one. Number two is Mel Kiper and Field Yates put together a mock 2-round draft together, which incorporated potential trades. And when they got to number 29 in the first round, there is a trade projected. And the trade involves Washington and Cleveland. The Browns trade into the first round and get number 29 from Washington. They also get Washington's 4th round selection, number 128 overall, in exchange for Washington moving just 4 spots back to Cleveland's 2nd round pick at 33 and picking up an early 3rd round pick in the process. Remember, Washington does not have a 3rd round pick. They have number 129 overall, number 261 overall, and then they don't pick again until round 4 at 128 overall. Now, this would still leave Washington, because it's 2 picks for 2 picks with 5 total, but instead of picking at 29, they'd be picking in the 2nd round at 33, and instead of picking at 128 in the 4th round, they'd be picking very early in the 3rd round at number 67. The trade, by the way, is for Cleveland to select at 29 overall and also get the 5th round, the 5th year option on Ole Miss quarterback Jackson Dart. So then what does Washington do at 33? At 33, which, by the way, is the first pick in the 2nd round, Cleveland's pick is the first in the 2nd round, they select Boston College edge rusher Donovan Azuruaku. He would be terrific value at the top of the 2nd round. Field Yates writes, he could easily climb into the 20s as one of the best pure pass rushers in the class. He had 16 and a half sacks last season. His 65 pressures led the nation. Yeah, this is a good player. Ben's talked about him, and that would be good value in the 2nd round. So what do they do then with their 2nd round pick that they've already got on the board? They select a corner, Jacob Parrish from Kansas State. And then, they did a 3-round mock draft. And then at 67, which would be the 3rd pick in the 3rd round, they select a running back that I like, Caleb Johnson from Iowa. So he would be a night 2 selection for Washington at running back. They would also have a corner, and they would have their edge rusher in 3 picks if they were to trade from 29 back to 33 with Cleveland. I think that the reasoning, and we've talked a lot about this, for trading back is there. Only 5 picks. They may not have a player with a 1st round grade at 29, and they're picking late enough in the 1st round where teams typically looking to trade into the 1st round to get a 5th year option on a player, more likely than not a quarterback. That's where they're looking. But Washington's not the only team, drafting late. Detroit's drafting at 28, Buffalo at 30, Kansas City at 31, Philadelphia at 32. All of these teams have quarterbacks too. So these are spots also that could be spots for teams to try to trade up to. Now, I don't think any of those teams have the limited number of picks in this draft that Washington has. 5 picks right now is, I think, the fewest of any team in the NFL after trading picks for Marshawn Lattimore, Deebo Samuel, and Laramie Tunsil. All right. Up next, my good friend Steve Zabin will jump on. Zabe loves golf more than anything. We'll get his thoughts on Sunday's incredible finish at the Masters. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, the team980.com. We're free and live on the Odyssey app. This segment of the show is brought to you by the Maryland Vehicle Theft Prevention Council. Maryland drivers, did you know a vehicle is stolen every 16 minutes in the state of Maryland? The key to preventing theft is in your hands. Lock your car, take your key, use an anti-theft device. Learn more about vehicle theft prevention at mdauthotheft.org. All right. Yesterday on my podcast, my good friend Steve Zabin jumped on with me. Nobody loves golf more than Zabe. He has hosted so many different golf shows. Of course, he is one of the all-time best in terms of sports talk show hosts in this market for years on this station, hosting the Sports Reporters with Andy Pollin and various others. Zabe jumped on with me yesterday and talked about, just the incredible sporting event that even for non-golf fans was memorable Sunday in Augusta. So he started off by kind of describing it in his words. Here's how it sounded.
Yeah, it was the stuff of life, the stuff of sports. Golf being the greatest game ever played, as you know, since you are a golfer, is one of our favorite sports. Yes, they're athletes. Golf is crazy because it puts you out there in such a naked way. And the best of the best, the gods of the greens, as we saw yesterday, do things that boggle your mind. I mean, Rory's 7-iron on 15 was like a thunderbolt from Zeus. But his wedge into the creek on 13 was the most brain-dead, stupid, you idiot, shot ever, and you and I hit those as well. So that's the appeal of golf for a recreational player when watching a tournament like the Masters. But I think the Masters still drags in people who are not really golfers because they can appreciate drama, right? They can appreciate the moment, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, not to mention the beauty of it, in springtime coming off, a winter in, parts of the country that are just miserable. It's just a beautiful scene on TV. But, I'm curious as to what you were thinking during the round. Going into it, after DeChambeau drained that putt on 18 on Saturday, did you think before the round started Rory was going to win?
Would shoot 75 and Rory would
Wow.
shoot 69. And I got the DeChambeau 75 right. I obviously missed on Rory. Out there. I loved the fair-haired Irish boy, the lad that was for many, many years. And then I cooled on him a bit when the live split came because he talked too much, he kind of flipped, he kind of flopped, and he just kind of wore me out. So I just am not as crazy pro Rory as before. That said, I was rooting for him to win, and I was very happy that he did win. But I'm also DeChambeau neutral, which I don't know about you and your golf circles, but there's a real split in my golf group chats about DeChambeau. I would say 40% of the people think that he has done all of this YouTube stuff and sort of change of persona at the behest of a PR firm that he has hired to change his image, and that it's all fake. And I'm like, man, I can't go there yet on him. I believe that he is genuinely trying to find his way to a more normal place as a human being. But after the round, when he was all petulant about Rory didn't talk to me at all, I'm just like, that was the same DeChambeau that turns me off.
Yeah.
But for the record, I'm DeChambeau neutral, Kevin, and I would have been fine with either one winning. I preferred Rory. I never want to see anyone implode. There's no golfer I dislike enough. Even Patrick Cantlay, probably my least favorite player.
They'd still be playing had he been in the final pairing.
Well, yeah, right, exactly. I don't ever want to see anyone just, go into the a tailspin on the course, because we've all been there as recreational players where nothing works. You can't make sense of anything. It's horrible. It's the worst.
So you thought Rory would win going in. I did not. I thought DeChambeau, when he drained that putt, I just said he's built for these moments, and I'm not DeChambeau neutral. I'm not a fan. I think a lot of what happened in the last year and, the Pinehurst win, and it comes off to me as he's trying way too hard.
So you're kind of the same mindset that this might be a bit of a storefront facade.
Yeah, I think so a little bit, but what do I know? And I talk to people, as you know, my very best friend for 35 years now, has been a part of the whole golf world for a while, and I can remember his conversations about Phil Mickelson way back in the day, and I would say, like, I'm mesmerized watching Phil, and he's like, yeah, but Phil is not very popular on tour, and I would be like shocked,
right? And when Phil was called the candidate, and there was whispers about there's more to Phil than you know.
Right.
That certainly became the case.
Yeah.
You and I are old enough to know that it's not wise to put any of our favorite athletes up on pedestals because they almost always fall off, So I think we're cautious. Our age guys are cautious about getting too into guys. But yeah, so I thought, listen, you know how we play coulda, shoulda, woulda as weekend golfers, saying, there's no reason to make bogey there. I was in the middle of the fairway, right?
Right.
So you do your coulda, woulda, shoulda score in your head. My coulda, woulda, shoulda score for Rory literally was minus 24 walking up 18. I went back and I was like, that shouldn't have been a double. That was an easy par. He made bogey. Why did he do this? Like, he played way better overall than what showed. But the real shock was just that.
Are you saying minus 24 over the 4 rounds? You're not saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I was.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean,
by the time he got to 18,
well, you
should have been minus 24 and 8 clear. It would have been a new record. Yeah. It would have been unbelievable because he left so much out there. But the shocker was that wedge on 13, because I was telling my boys on a group chat, I go, as they're like, it's over on number 10 or 11. I go, wait till he's on the azalea side of 12. Once he's there and he makes par, then I'll say, okay, you're clear to land, return to base.
So let's talk about
that's the most dangerous hole out there where you can make 8 or 9. Nobody makes 8 or 9 on 13.
Right.
They might make double like Rory did, but not an 8 or a 9. So as soon as he got past 12, I'm like, okay, now it's over. And he lays up perfectly. He's got a wedge in his hand. And then I liken it to a bird strike. Sully Sullenberger over a clear Manhattan sky, bird strike. And the next hour and a half
looking for the
was
Hudson.
white knuckle mayhem.
Yeah. So back to just the first hole. I'm curious if you changed your mind after he doubled 1 and was behind after 2.
I didn't necessarily change my mind. I just was like, oh boy, please God, don't make this a 4-hour hate watch as Rory implodes.
Yeah.
Because look, you can shoot 80 on Sunday at the Masters. Rory has done it. Spieth has done it. It's brutal. So I was just hoping that would not be the case, and it wasn't. So that's good. But yeah, it's just great theater. Golf is so amazing, and the fact that these guys, while they can hit shots we can't conceive of, they also can screw up and miss teeny tiny little putts. I mean, hell, half of the kids in the drive, chip, and putt would have made the first 4-footer for Rory on 18. I mean, it's that simple. But golf puts you on the spot, man, and that's the beautiful thing.
I had Denny McCarthy on radio with me just a little while ago, actually, and he actually said the putt on 18, he thought there was a decent chance he'd miss it. He thought it was a really difficult putt, and I thought he'd miss it just because that's the kind of putt Rory always misses. You know, you love the granular detail of these rounds. Not that we're going to go through shot by shot, but I at 13 when he laid up, everybody seems to be in consensus that was the right thing to do before he hit it in the creek. I'm assuming you were okay with him laying up there with at that point a 3 or a 4 shot lead, right?
I was not okay with him hitting 3-wood off the tee.
Oh, okay.
Because that was something he hadn't done all week. And he has not hit big, out-of-control sniping hooks, which is the only real danger off of that tee, to dump it left into Rays Creek. He hit, the misses, especially on Sunday, were just little bleeders. 5-yard fades, like on 1 that didn't clear the bunker, like on 8, the par 5. I mean, those were the misses for him. So a 5-yard bleeder on that hole with driver puts you up in the pine straw, and there's all kinds of windows to shoot through, like Mickelson did that one time, and just get over the creek in 2, and then you're fine. So I didn't like the laying back with the 3-wood, because as I like to say, and I said on Twitter, when it comes to golf, God hates a coward. And when it came to 18 and he's got a 1-shot lead, I think a lot of people are like, hit 3-wood, hit 3. I'm like, no, driver. You have to step up and own the moment and hit driver. And he did on both the regulation 18 and the playoff. And I thought that was awesome.
I mean, on some level, as you're talking, it's like, to me, the less nervous shots for him, or the less nerve impacted shots for him, are when he's swinging big. You know, the 9-iron on 7, the the 7 irons on 15 and 17. It's when you get to putting in some of the more delicate shots, like the third shot on 13, where maybe he just feels it a lot.
Yeah, because he's human. Like, we all are. And that's also the beauty and the mystery of golf, that guys like Rory McIlroy, who has played in 1 million competitive golf events since the time he was 6, could still feel that way over what are supposedly simple little shots. But anyway, he survived it, showed great stones. It could be the summer of Rory, given that this is now off his back. I was trying to think, and maybe you can add some to this, the biggest monkey off the back moments in sports. My first thought was Steve Young at the Super Bowl for the Niners, where he literally told his teammates, NFL Films showed it, saying, "Get that monkey off my back," because he was such a great player who finally won the championship. You know, the funny thing is, we in the chattering business in sports, we construct these magnificent narrative castles based on literally a flip of a coin. If a ball goes in, right? Or if it goes out,
but
it's like, okay, we can now build this castle narrative, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I do think the narrative castle that we built and everybody in sports chatter built around Rory was a pretty solidly built castle with a lot of thought that went into it.
It had a lot of bricks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was well reinforced as a guy. And I would say about Rory, I go, look, he is the fastest Ferrari in the field when it's not in the shop. He is the quintessential front runner. When he's on, and he blows everyone away.
Yeah.
The only major he won where it was at all of a fight was at Valhalla in the dark.
Right.
The other 3 prior to this, he just lapped the field.
Yeah. Did you think he was going to make that putt in the playoff or not?
I wasn't willing to bet my salary on it.
No. Did you?
I sat there and I thought, people have missed these before. I mean, please, God, don't let him miss this.
It was
and thankfully he didn't.
You know, it was not dead center. It was inside left.
Every golfer knows a putt that's dead center and what it looks like.
Yes.
And that one was not. But, you know, the thing is, he's got Faxon as his putting coach now, and his technique is to not take a practice stroke.
Right.
And I think that can work Monday or Thursday through Saturday. I'm just not convinced that it's the best strategy when you're standing over, say, a downhill 5-footer for eagle on 15, and you got to step up to it and just gun it. So I don't know. My boy John Ronas on the Capital Golf Gang says it's because Faxon knows he's a crap putter, and so he's like, just get it over with.
Yes.
No practice stroke.
Right. Sometimes it's just go up there and just be an athlete to a certain degree and don't think about it. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Like it's going to be what it's going to be. You're not going to help yourself by doing a practice stroke. I don't know. Golf is so fascinating because, man, there's so many ways to do it, and everyone's different. And, you know, you find something and it works for a while, and then it stops working. And you're like, okay, well, I got to go find another thing that works.
If he had lost,
greatest game ever.
If he had lost, where would that have ranked in the all-time chokes?
Jesus, I mean, it'd be the worst choke in Masters history, surpassing, in my opinion, Norman choking to Faldo.
Yeah.
It'd be the worst because he was the most pulled for of players, meaning the fans wanted him so badly. All of the golf establishment, all of the past greats were picking him openly. Nicklaus, Watson, Player. And they're like, I think it's Rory's time. And I'm just like, shut up, you guys. It's like too much pressure. So that would have been the worst because he threw it away 3 times. He threw it away on number 1. He threw it away again on 13. And he threw it away on 18 when it was literally in his hand.
Yeah.
So had he thrown it away for good in the playoff, oh my God, it would have been awful. Again, I don't even want Patrick Cantlay to suffer that. Although maybe I could get behind it.
So tell me, because I'm sure on your show this morning, you did some CBS television discussion.
Oh, yeah.
So I was irritated by a few things. What did you have problems with?
The largest problem I have is that they're accent triplets, as I call them. Immelman from South Africa. Frank Nobilo from New Zealand, and Ian Baker Finchy from Australia. These guys are, according to everyone who knows them, the nicest guys ever. And they come off across on TV as the nicest guys ever. But you know what the broadcast lacks now more than ever since Vern retired is some gravitas, some weight, some oomph, some punch. I don't need syrup. Okay, I don't need, oh, that's so great. Ian Baker Finch is too syrupy for my tastes on his best day. Don't care for him. I know he won a major. He won a British and then fell off the map. Immelman won this tournament, the Masters, and then fell off the map. Nobilo has all of one PGA Tour win, the Greater Greensboro Open. Now, I ask you this. If you were to say, boys, we got Michael Campbell, we got Rich Beam, and we got Mike Weir. We got the dream team of broadcasting, baby. Just put them on the air and let them cook.
Right. Yeah.
Nobody would say that's a great threesome.
Yeah.
But it's the equivalent threesome without accents. And so I have a problem with that philosophically. And people come at me like I'm some monster. How dare you say that about these guys? They're really nice. I'm just critiquing it from a broadcast standpoint. That's all. So that's my biggest problem with CBS. I'm still very much Nance positive. People, though, are starting to nitpick at him, saying he's losing his fastball and this and that. And I get it. They're always going to come at the king, but I'm still Nance positive. I think they've done a lot of really good new wrinkles to the broadcast about some drone shots and angles we haven't seen before. But their shot tracer was too inconsistent for most golf fans' liking. And they don't use the graphics that normal broadcasts for golf majors use, which is the map of the hole with the balls and the numbers next to the drive showing he's here, blah, blah, blah. And they don't use the shot link data that the tour uses, which gets you, he's got 5'7" for birdie here, or he's got 9.4 inches or 9 feet 4 inches for par. That data is being collected. It's on the Masters app. You notice they never used it on TV. So it left Nance and others to kind of eyeball and guess he's got about 4 feet left. Well, that's not good enough. Golf fans want to know because the make difference, and other golf broadcasts have your make percentage by foot. You want to know, is it 4.5 feet, or is it 7? Because the numbers start going down quickly the further out you get. So they don't use that from, I think, an aesthetic standpoint or just a stylistic standpoint. I don't know if the club itself is leaning on them to say, I don't want to see all this junk on the screen. But it's got to get more modern. And the other thing, the big thing to me is Butler Cabin, I can smell it on TV when I see it. It smells musty and old and like grandmother's cow.
Oh my God.
And I think it'd be a wonderful, I think Butler.
The only thing
Butler
missing is
Cabin
shag carpeting.
Yes. It smells through my TV. It's so musty and old. I look at Butler Cabin and I think this reminds me of field trips in school when you got off the big yellow bus and you went to go see, Martha Ross's childhood home. And you walk in the hallway and there's a velvet rope and you lean into the room. Oh, look at the antique typewriter.
Spider webs everywhere. Yeah.
Right. So for me as a viewer at home, I'm watching. of skill, but it's tradition. And some traditions die really, really hard. And I am certain that the Green Jackets are insistent that continues to be a part of their presentation. It's just dumb. Just like the Green Jacket ceremony in the Butler cabin, they do a second one outside.
Yeah.
The outside one is way better.
Yeah, I watched the outside one last night. Yep.
Yeah. You don't need the inside one. Like, just let that sunset and it'll be a thing of the past.
So
I mean, look, they used to make the tour players hire a local caddy.
Right.
And that didn't end until like 1983. So when you're seeing Nicholas and Watson and those guys win in the 70s, you're seeing some good old down-home Augusta caddies who are absolutely pimping birdies by their man, waving the flag. I mean, watch old Masters highlights of the local loopers.
Yeah.
They're hilarious.
Yeah, right. By the way, I'm just reading your tweet. CBS just needs to understand that nothing kills the buzz of a tournament that hangs in the balance than the dead innards of the Butler cabin. Which, I was pissed off when they went to the interview with Bryson. While, all I wanted was just a close-up of Rory, just the pressure that was building. So I'm surprised you didn't mention what I mentioned, which is this.
Which is?
Jim Nantz on 18. It was a victory march conversation and narration. I'm like, are you out of your mind? This could easily be a bogey playoff, if not a double bogey loss. And he's got the story of the token and the 30 balls on the range and the parents and the whole up. He had the whole thing planned out for a victory march, and it wasn't a victory march. This was, you got a par to win, and it's Rory, for crying out loud. Everybody that's watched him knew there was a chance he could bogey 18.
Yeah, a lot of people were definitely on your side on that it was a premature, sort of unspooling of a narrative and a story and storytelling and all that. It's just, he had a 124-yard gap wedge to the biggest, fattest green with a backstop behind the pin.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that he dumped it into the bunker is mind-boggling. It's a terrible miss. So my only bit of defense of Nance is that it should never be, like, he dumps it on the green, it's over. It's over, it's over, it's over. But Nance was in storytelling mode. I mean, this is, as I've tweeted, now it's time for Nance to cook. Put on the hat and let him cook.
Yeah.
I do think, that story about the range tokens.
Yeah.
And I know that, Rory's parents were working class and they weren't, elites or rich. I listen to that story, and my only response, like many sports stories that we get flooded with now on podcasts and whatnot, cool story, bro. Might be true. I don't care if it's true. It's a cool story. I take all these stories with a grain of salt because something tells me that Jerry McElroy wasn't really skint and out of money until Tuesday. He just wanted to go home. So he told Rory,
yeah.
I ain't got more money till Tuesday.
Right.
Hit this one like it's the last shot of the match.
And I'm meeting my mates at the pub anyway. We got to get out of here.
Right.
Yeah.
He said they said that he worked 100 hours a week. And I'm like, really? He was like cleaning toilets and whatever at a sports club in the morning, was the bartender noon to 6 at the golf club in Hollywood.
Right.
Went back to clean later that night. I'm sure there were some weeks he worked 100 hours, but I don't know.
All right, last one. You know how all those years, like whether it was Lee Westwood or if we go way back, it was Tom Kite before he won. Lee Westwood never won a major. But is there a player right now in the game who's the best to not win a major that we care about?
Oberg probably, but he'll get his.
Yeah, but he's too young.
He's very young. A guy who has persevered and has not won a major?
Yes.
Well, assuming we're going to sunset Westwood because he went to the Live and he's kind of done now.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Who would be a guy that has persevered.
Can't lay Finau.
Yeah, maybe. Let me look up PGA Tour money list. They probably have to be over, 30 years old?
Yeah, right? Maybe 35. I don't know. I mean, when we started to talk about Westwood, he was number one in the world, right? Tom Kite before he won. Where did he win it? Pebble Beach, right?
I don't think Westwood was ever number one.
Are you
but
sure?
I may be wrong.
I thought he was number one briefly.
I know Luke Donald was.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a joke because he was never considered the best player in the world, but he had so many top tens and majors.
Westwood reached number one in the world. He did. Yeah.
Wow, look at you.
Well,
look at the big brain on you.
No, I thought for whatever reason. I mean, people are certainly. Oh, here's one. But you know what? It's been so long. But Ricky Fowler. I mean, but he's just not been in contention for so long.
No, he is not. I'm really scrolling pretty far down of guys who are still out there knocking it around, and I can't see anybody. There's a lot of younger guys that they burst on the scene like, oh, this guy's going to win majors.
Hovland.
As if it's so easy. Yeah, Hovland and, Finau. And who else? Cam Young.
Yeah.
I mean,
we would have been having this. It would have been Xander if not for last year. That would have been the easy answer.
I mean, Max Homa was brief. How about Max Homa finding his game at Augusta?
Yeah.
Finish in months. That's a crazy thing right there.
Right.
How about Nick Dunlap? Did you hear the story about Nick Dunlap after he shot 90 on day one?
I did not.
So Nick Dunlap does not WD, which is a very well-respected move because he could claim a Al Czervik-like injury. Ooh, my arm, it's broken,
right.
Whatever, in WD. He was hitting like shank drivers. You should Google some of Nick Dunlap's worst shots on Thursday. They're horror shows, right? So he doesn't WD, goes back to the house he's renting for the week, sends his caddy out to Target to buy 6 dozen of the cheapest balls he can find, and then starts firing them off the back deck into the woods in the middle of the night. Couldn't see where they were going, just trying to get a feel. How incredible is that? And then he shoots one over the next day to redeem himself.
One under, Zabe. One under. Shot
what,
71.
Was it one under?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, one under. It was the widest margin between rounds.
Wow. Yeah, 90 and 71.
He's gutting golf balls into the woods behind his rental house, trying to find something.
But good for him. It is true, right, that Quail Hollow, Oakmont, and then Royal Portrush are courses that do set up nicely for Rory's game, correct?
Well, certainly Quail Hollow. He's won there 4 times.
Yeah.
So now he didn't win the PGA when it was there, but he's won there 4 times for the Wells Fargo. So that is a course that fits that horse. Oakmont, I don't know. He's just a great player, so I'd expect that he would be very much in contention there. And then Royal Portrush, for quite a while, Rory had a reputation that despite being from Ireland where the conditions are harsh, he didn't play in tough conditions very well.
Yeah.
And the British Open he did win, the weather laid down that week at I think it was in Liverpool.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think Portrush is amazing. I got to get there and play someday, but that's a story for another day.
All right. Thanks. Appreciate it as always.
All right, buddy. Good to talk to you. Another day we'll talk about what's going on with the badges and the ticket situation down there because that's equally fascinating to me.
All right, we'll do that. I'm planning on it for next year this time, but going into the tournament. But we've got more golf talk the rest of the summer. All right, I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, buddy.
Steve Zabin, everybody. My buddy just sent me a note to say it is Betsy Ross, not Martha Ross. Yeah, I think he was just throwing out a random name. Yeah, Betsy Ross. I think she did the American flag, right? Pretty sure. the creator of the American flag. Zabe's great on golf. By the way, the ratings for the Masters came out late yesterday. The most watched final round of the Masters since 2018. Now, Tiger won it in 2019, but if you recall, because of weather, they had to move up that final round to super early in the morning. So it played out over late morning into the early afternoon. It did not, approach late Sunday into early evening. The 2018 Masters was Patrick Reed beating Ricky Fowler, but Jordan Spieth was in it, and others were in it as well. But a massive audience for the Masters on Sunday, 12.7 million viewers on average, up 33% from last year. All right, there is a big-time cornerback on the market. More on that next. So during the course of this show, many of you have been sending me the Ian Rappaport breaking NFL news that the Dolphins and Jalen Ramsey have mutually agreed to explore trade options. And Ian Rappaport writes it wouldn't surprise him if Jalen Ramsey plays elsewhere in 2025. He's due $25.1 million in a fully guaranteed this season. And yet the Dolphins are looking to move on from him. Man, the Dolphins have really messed some things up here in recent years. I would certainly say that if they had not traded for Marshawn Lattimore in November, that this would have been right there at the top of the list. You would absolutely be a team interested in dealing for a guy who has been a 7-time Pro Bowler as recently as 2023. Now, he's had some hamstring issues. By the way, sound familiar? Marshawn Lattimore as well. Do you really want two corners with recent hamstring issues? A 31 and a 30-year-old corner, or 30 and 29? I think Ramsey is, hold on, I'll look it up. Ramsey is 30, turns 31 during the season. What's Marshawn Lattimore, Max? Is he 28 or 29?
He's 29.
He's 29.
Yeah, 29.
Yeah. He's 28. He turns 29 this month. First of all, Jalen Ramsey's not going to be cheap. You know, Jalen Ramsey is going to be, at the very least, a second-round pick. He's under contract. I looked it up during the break. They signed him to the 3-year, $72.3 million deal last year. So he's basically under contract through the 2028 season. So you'd have 4 years of him being under contract. Jalen Ramsey's a badass corner when he's healthy. He was a big acquisition. The year before, it wasn't the year of. Beckham Jr. came during the Rams Super Bowl run. Ramsey was traded for the year before, when the Rams were basically just trading away picks and trying to win it in that window when they had Matt Stafford, and it paid off for them. They got a Super Bowl. They won one. And that was massive. By the way, he was a first-team All-Pro corner for the Rams in his first, in his first full seasons in LA. In 2020, first-team All-Pro. 2021, that was the year they won the Super Bowl, right? 2021 was the year they won it. Beat the Bengals in the Super Bowl. I think so. So I can't see dealing. Look, the idea of a healthy Ramsey and a healthy Lattimore with Sanders still moving inside, it's attractive. You still have to stop the run. By the way, Ramsey's an excellent. Look this up for me, Max. My belief is that Ramsey has been an excellent run stopper and tackler.
Yeah, he leads. If I'm not mistaken, he led the NFL in quarterback pressures among corners.
And but what about as a tackler?
I'm pulling up his PFF right now.
Yeah, I think he's been very good as a run stopping corner, a total willing. By the way, Lattimore as well.
Oh, he'll come up and he'll come up and make a hit. He ranked he got an 85 out of 100. He ranks 10th among corners in run defense.
PFF?
Yes, per PFF.
Yeah, he's been an excellent run stopping corner. You got to be better this year stopping the run. Corners are a big part of that. Everybody's got to, contribute. But they've got to get, as I've said since the very end of the season in December on, you've just got to get better on the edges. You can't keep getting gashed in that C and outside gaps. They've got to get better there. I would say at this point on Jalen Ramsey, for a second rounder, it depends on the state of Marshawn Lattimore. We've heard nothing but good things in the offseason about Marshawn Lattimore. We've heard was never healthy. He needs a full offseason. He needs health. He needs a full offseason of being in this system. I am all for taking advantage of this rookie quarterback contract window with Jaden. Totally on board for that. it just seems like, man, you're going to trade all these picks for 2 corners, and you drafted Sanders still. Very important position. Got to be better. You got to be better as a run-stopping team and as a pass-rushing team as well. I'm still old school when it comes to pass defense. I think when you rattle the quarterback, your, medium average corner becomes better than average. And when you can't get to the quarterback, your better than average quarterback becomes average. I'm still a believer in that. I understand you've got to be able to cover in this league. It's hard to cover in this league. Ramsey's done it at a high level, and he'll contribute as a willing coming up to make tackles guy. He's a star corner. You look at Ramsey's career, and I pulled this thing up during the break. I would have not guessed 7 Pro Bowls. I would have guessed a lot of Pro Bowls. 7 Pro Bowls, 3 first-team All-Pro seasons, and really the only season in which he was completely healthy, that he was not a Pro Bowler, was last year. He played 17 games. He was compromised at times, going back to 2023. And the Dolphins, obviously, had some issues in 2024 with quarterback and everything else. Man, the Dolphins went from, are they actually a legitimate Super Bowl contender like 2 years ago, as they were making their way into the postseason and having, it was the 2023 season or the 2022 season in which they put up 70 on Denver.
It was 23. I remember that very well.
When they were just scoring at a ridiculous rate.
Insane.
The speed on the field was unbelievable with, obviously Hill and, Achane and who am I forgetting?
Jalen Waddle.
Jay Waddle.
Mostert was on that team, I think.
Mostert was on that team. Yeah. Tua was healthy.
Yeah.
And they were chucking it and throwing it and running it all over everybody until they went to Arrowhead and it was 6 below 0.
Hey, those candy-ass uniforms only get you so far, right?
That did not work out for them. Jalen Ramsey apparently available. There's going to be a market for Jalen Ramsey for teams that think that they are in a win-now situation, 100%. The good news, you would think, they seem to never feel like there's enough defensively. I can't imagine Philly with what they added at corner last year with Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, and they don't need another quarterback, do they? I don't think so.
No.
Well, they did, say goodbye to a couple of their veterans in the secondary, right?
Yeah.
I don't think Slay's there anymore.
Gardner Johnson and Slay are no longer.
Gardner Johnson is gone too?
Yes.
So Mitchell and DeJean are the corners that Philly has. Mm-hmm. Where's our lads here? Let me get our lads depth chart right now. Mitchell, Cooper, Keely Ringo is projected as a starter at the other corner.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how he kind of develops. I know people were high on him coming out, and he just kind of hasn't really delivered. But I mean, who knows? We'll see what where it kind of goes when they once that
the Eagles have plenty of picks. They've got number 1. They got a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, and 4 5s.
How he's gonna cook, and I'm gonna hate it. It's gonna hurt me. I know it.
Really good story, kind of funny, from the Masters involving Adam Schefter when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com.
All right. As we just discussed, Jalen Ramsey and the Dolphins have mutually agreed to explore a trade. Ramsey is set to receive $25.1 million fully guaranteed in 2025. Ramsey played in all 17 games, tallying just 2 interceptions. He ranked 16th overall among NFL corners in 2024. Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders will have their numbers retired by the Colorado Buffaloes. Shedeur completed 71% of his passes through 2 seasons at Colorado, threw for 64 touchdowns and just 13 interceptions. Hunter led an unprecedented Heisman campaign on both sides of the football, racking up over 1,400 snaps in his 2024 season. Last night, WNBA draft, Paige Beckers went number 1 overall. The Mystics held 3 of the top 6 picks. At number 3, they drafted Sonia Citron, a guard out of Notre Dame, Kiki Ariafin, a forward from USC at number 4, and number 6 pick, Georgia Amoore, a guard from Kentucky. NBA, the play-in starts tonight. The Hawks take on the Magic at 7:30. The Grizzlies take on the Warriors at 10. Tonight on the Team 980, the Washington Capitals will take on the New York Islanders in their penultimate game of the season here on Team 980 at 7:45. And then on the other side, the Nats lost to Paul Skeens and the Pirates last night 10-3. Skeens pitched 6 innings, gave 6 Ks, and giving up just 1 earned run. The Nats will take on the Pirates tonight at 6:40 on 106.7 The Fan. And that's what's trending.
We got some breaking news as we bring in senior NFL insider Adam Schefter and Super Bowl champ Jason McCourty. Shefty, what can you tell us about Bill Belichick in North Carolina?
Kevin, what many would never have imagined is now happening. Bill Belichick is finalizing a deal to become the next head coach at North Carolina. He now will be affectionately
Adam
known
Schefter, we've heard it
as Chapo
many
Bill.
times over the
NFL
years. Adam
with
Schefter with breaking news, usually on social media first. I don't know if this story is true, but a guy by the name of Hayden Winks, who is the director at Underdog, all right, a sports fantasy and gambling site, tweeted out the following. Adam Schefter just said, and I don't know where he said it, that some random 20-year-old ran up to him while he was at the Masters without his phone. You're not allowed to have your phone at the Masters. For those of you who don't know, you have to leave it at the door. You're not allowed to bring in cell phones to the Masters. That's why all of the shots down the stretch, people aren't holding up their phones shooting video of Rory McIlroy. You know, they're just actually taking it in real time, watching it themselves with their own eyes rather than worrying about posting it on social media. Anyway, this guy Hayden Winks said, Schefter said that some random 20-year-old ran up to him while he was at the Masters without his phone and asked him if he had heard about the huge NFL trade that just happened. That is outstanding. I don't know what the reaction was. I don't know if Schefter said, "What are you talking about? Who was it? Who? What was the trade?" If he ran out of the Masters to grab his phone, but that's a really good prank. That's a Jim on Dwight prank, but even better because there was nothing Schefter could do about it because he didn't have his phone. Can you imagine? I mean, guys like Schefter and Ian Rappaport, they are. I mean, I've talked to Adam about this over the years. They never really have a break. The NFL is basically year-round. Their job is to be on top of the latest news or not to create, but to report the latest news. And it's very competitive. And to do that, you are never, ever detached. But if this is true and Schefter was detached for a few hours while at the Masters, somebody coming up to him and saying that is brilliant. No, there's nothing in this tweet that talks about how Schefter handled it. But there wasn't really any breaking NFL news over the weekend. So there's that. All right. Thanks to Bo Marchionte. He was on with us to talk draft. Andrew Brandt, excellent as always. Steve Zabin. Max did a great job. Again, we're back tomorrow. Chris Russell's next.